Hello, friends. Today is December 15th. News Horizon Monday is back with you. It is the start of a new working week of negotiations. I'll call it just that. Yesterday in Berlin, they lasted for 5 hours. Kushner and Witkoff arrived there. At the negotiations, Zelenskyy stated that he is ready to renounce NATO accession in exchange for security guarantees. In parallel, preparations for elections have begun on Bankova, the president's office. Sources from RBC-Ukraine report that Zelenskyy has given instructions to prepare a law on holding elections during wartime without lifting martial law. However, regarding the head of the office of the president of Ukraine, there is no decision, and most likely there won't be one. Let's go through everything in order based on what I know. I am ready to tell you in detail. Subscribe, comment. Thank you for supporting our work. To you, my dear subscribers, and also those who accidentally stumbled upon the channel, stay here. It will be interesting, believe me. Regarding victory, there are several interesting insider reports indicating that negotiations are ongoing. They have not collapsed. And while the press writes that the negotiations in Berlin have ended, for example, I believe they have not ended. The negotiations are continuing. After all, even Zelenskyy's advisor, Litvin, reported that they will continue today. Today, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz will join these talks, and in the evening, French President Macron and British Prime Minister Starmer will also join the discussion. By the way, Merz was not present yesterday. Only his representative attended. Witkoff, Trump's representative, said after the negotiations that there is significant progress. He noted that the representatives conducted in-depth discussions on the 20-point peace plan, the economic agenda, and other issues. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports that the negotiations between the U.S. and Ukraine delegations that took place yesterday were tense. Well, of course they were tense. They couldn't have gone smoothly. But the meeting between Witkoff and Zelenskyy was very warm. Sincerely, they hugged and shook hands. The Wall Street Journal writes that, according to their data, the American side showed no readiness to make concessions to Kiev within the discussion of the draft peace agreement. Well, and Zelenskyy, as Reuters writes, stated what he had declared the day before regarding NATO. If not NATO, then there must be security guarantees, such as Article 5 of NATO, preferably cemented by a decision in the United States Congress. Verbatim, Reuters writes the following, citing the president, "Ukraine has sought NATO membership from the very beginning. However, this cannot be achieved because there is no support from the U.S. and some European countries. Therefore, now, bilateral security guarantees from the U.S. in the format of Article 5 of the NATO Charter, as well as guarantees from European partners and other countries, this is already a compromise on Ukraine's part." In other words, Zelenskyy says he is ready to compromise, but whether Russia will be ready to do so remains to be seen. We will, of course, watch closely. And the High Representative of the European Union, Kaja Kallas, indirectly acknowledged that an alternative to NATO membership is being prepared for Ukraine. She literally said the following, "If this is not the case, i.e. Ukraine's membership in NATO, we need to clarify what tangible security guarantees exist. They cannot be papers and promises. That is, they cannot be empty. They must be real so that Ukraine can defend itself. We must understand that Donbass is not Putin's final goal." Indeed, Kaja Kallas is very concerned and alarmed that the war might be frozen, because then there will be new challenges for Europe. She was alarmed after J.D. Vance's visit to the Munich Security Conference at the beginning of this year, where J.D. Vance directly said, "We will not help Ukraine. Now the entire responsibility is on you. End this war." As you can see, Trump remains steadfast in his desire to freeze this war. And the further it goes, the more it is reported that Russia is slowly returning to the world agenda. This is a very bad story, but ending the war is on the agenda, and in Europe no one is taking it off the table. Trump does not insist on this categorically. Even Finnish President Alexander Stubb believes that now is a critical moment for peace negotiations on Ukraine, and peace may be closer than ever. And of course, he says, we are currently actively working on 3 documents, a framework document of 20 points. Security guarantees for Ukraine, of course, the reconstruction of Ukraine. Thus, we are currently studying the details together with the Americans, Europeans, and Ukrainians. And Stubb emphasized that Russia is the main threat to Europe and the Western world as a whole. Indeed, despite everything, Europeans are preparing for a possible Russian invasion of their countries. The format of negotiations on Ukraine with the participation of American mediators from the circle of Kushner looks not entirely convincing, but the very fact of their arrival in Berlin is a very positive step. Such an opinion was expressed by German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius, whom we haven't heard from in a long time. Indeed, Boris Pistorius hasn't been heard from in a very long time. He hasn't given a single comment in recent months. But now he expresses skepticism regarding Putin's readiness for peace. Of course, the Germans, just like the Estonians, Kaja Kallas, the former Prime Minister of Estonia, really do not want Putin to have the opportunity to start any other more active combat operations or sabotage against their countries while he is busy in Ukraine. No one, says Pistorius. We have seen this more than once, so I won't be surprised if it happens again, although, of course, I hope for a different result. Yes, indeed, they hope that the negotiations will fail. This cannot be ruled out. Indeed so. Meanwhile, Zelenskyy has ordered the development of a draft law on the possibility of holding elections. The publication RBC-Ukraine reports that last week there was a working meeting on Bankova specifically about elections. They started preparing a bill that attempts to resolve all problems related to security and beyond. Among the innovations is the possibility of multi-day voting, and they must fit within a 60-day time frame, as with early presidential elections. Therefore, indeed, friends, elections are being considered as a very likely option, even under conditions of continued war. If the head of the office of the President of Ukraine is not appointed before the new year, this is the second issue currently being actively discussed on Bankova, then one won't be appointed for a very long time. This is reported by RBC-Ukraine sources. And also individual deputies write that contacts between Zelenskyy and Yermak have been restored. They communicate often. Allegedly, they had a scandal. Honestly, I don't believe in this scandal, but now they say they are constantly in contact. Well, as for me, this is more than understandable. Even the week before last, the question of appointing the head of the office seemed almost resolved. Deputy Prime Minister Fedorov was supposed to become the head, but he put forward a number of demands regarding changing the structure and work of the office of the President of Ukraine in general. Zelenskyy didn't like that. By the way, friends, we discussed this with Fasenko on my channel literally last week. In general, Zelenskyy would like to conceptually reform the office of the President, somehow combining it with the NSDC apparatus, of which he himself is the head. But right now, the President is fully absorbed in peace negotiations. So there is simply no energy or time to start such a serious reshuffle, writes RBC-Ukraine. But in my opinion, this is a pure excuse, because RBC-Ukraine actually, during this entire period of the large-scale invasion, excuse me, friends, actively covered the work of the President's office in a light very convenient for them. Therefore, we are watching the personnel and appointments. Meanwhile, in Europe, Fico stated that he would block Ukraine's accession to the EU. This is expected, but other countries blocking entry to the European Union is a matter of time. It will be a very acute issue now if we manage to agree on freezing the war. Next, the goal we will move towards is, of course, EU membership, and on this path, we will have a lot of problems. What does Fico say? By the way, these problems won't be defined by Fico alone. I will be, he says, the first to speak against Ukraine's entry into the EU. We cannot allow this. Serbia is 100 times better candidate than Ukraine, he says. Fear Ukrainian corruption, because we don't know how much money was stolen. The EU allocated 177.5 billion euros to Ukraine, and we don't know where it settled. He will definitely speculate on this. Although, honestly, there are enough scandals in Europe as it is, so there will be supporters of Ukraine, unequivocally. For example, our history with Poland is very complex. The further it goes, the more you see reports in social networks that there are many incidents of clashes between Poles and Ukrainian citizens in Poland. They are a vivid indicator of how Poles treat Ukrainians unfavorably, of course not all. This week on Friday, Zelenskyy allegedly plans to visit Warsaw to meet with the president of Poland. Of course, this hasn't been officially announced yet, but there are preliminary reports. Meanwhile, the Poles are arguing with the Hungarians. Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski and Hungarian Foreign Minister Szijjártó argued again. Sikorski wrote that Orban earned his Order of Lenin by criticizing the European Union's decision, allowing Russian assets to remain frozen without unanimous approval. In the comments, his Hungarian colleague Szijjártó lashed out with words that Poland allegedly wants a war between Russia and Europe. Sikorski replied that only Russia can start a war, and in that case it is obvious that Hungary and Budapest today stand on the side of Russia. Well, generally, friends, that's how it looks. Meanwhile, our foreign minister for now, who might also be removed from his post and sent as ambassador to Poland, with Kyslytsya potentially taking his post, this is also interesting information. So currently, Foreign Minister of Ukraine Sybiha called Orban the most valuable frozen asset in Europe. Thus, the minister commented on Orban's post that the EU, bypassing Hungary, agreed on the indefinite freezing of Moscow's assets. And this week, EU countries that directly border Russia are starting work on concrete steps to strengthen the defense of the European Union, which I told you about a bit earlier. Such a statement was made by Finnish Prime Minister Petteri Orpo, Bloomberg writes. What exactly is the essence of this preparation, friends? According to him, the flank countries want to clearly appeal to Brussels and receive funds to strengthen defense. At the start, about 1.5 billion euros are available. For pilot projects in the new EU budget framework, which will begin in 2027, the volume of defense funds may grow to 135 billion euros. Europeans are preparing. Countries plan to submit applications for financing projects related to strengthening border security, says Bloomberg. This includes air defense, drone detection, and countermeasure systems, as well as the development of ground forces. As you know, Poland has already received over 40 billion euros this year to strengthen defense capabilities. They are indeed strengthening their eastern flank, and they promise not to expand NATO to the east within the framework of our negotiation processes. Now, friends, a bit of information about the attack on Ukraine and the attack on Russia. I want to note, and you probably note as well, that recently we are seeing mutual strikes. Russia on Ukraine and Ukraine on Russia, although the scale differs a bit. But we are already causing significant damage to the Russian aggressor on its territory. Air Defense Forces of Ukraine last night neutralized 133 out of 153 drones with which they, i.e. Russia, attacked Ukraine. Hits by 17 attack drones were recorded at 10 locations. In the Dnipropetrovsk region, 5 people were injured due to enemy shelling, the Regional Military Administration reports. And our drones and missiles, friends, attacked Russia en masse from evening until morning. It was loud, particularly in the Moscow region, Belgorod region, and Rostov region. Preliminarily, the Luch thermal power plant in Belgorod was attacked. There are minor blackouts there. The gas processing plant in Astrakhan was also attacked. Power lines in the Rostov region. Also, one of the probable targets could have been the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery. They say a missile arrived in Belgorod. At Moscow's Sheremetyevo airport, they traditionally introduced the carpet plan, flight restrictions, and the Russian Ministry of Defense stated they shot down 130 of our drones over 12 regions. Well, we launched 130, and count that they launched 150. There is no parity yet, but of course we would like to scale up, and Russia's territory is significantly larger than Ukraine's. And in conclusion, friends, a bit about Donald Trump's rating, which is tumbling down, but he seems not to care. Support for Trump and his administration is falling even among the most devoted MAGA supporters, writes NBC News, citing a Decision Desk poll. According to the poll, 58% of Americans do not approve of Trump's actions as president. While 42% support him, since April 2025, the approval level among MAGA has decreased by 3%. Even his own people don't trust him. But this doesn't help or harm us yet in any way. As they say in Ukraine, this makes us neither cold nor hot. We need to do our own thing. Thank you, friends, for being with me. Subscribe to this one. I love, appreciate, and respect everyone. And don't switch the channel. Everything will be Ukraine.